You know, there's an old saying in Texas, if it's true, it ain't bragging. Well, today, Texas is #1 state in the country to do business, is the #1 strongest economy, #1 in job creation, #1 in exports, but also has the fastest growing population in the country. And that's why I think it's important how we handle this budget going forward. We've got people coming into the state of Texas voting with their feet for opportunity, and to maintain that opportunity, we need to make sure that we keep our spending under control, fund our priorities, and keep our taxes low. The opening base budget that the Senate Bill 1, base bill, will be introducing is a careful, it's a thoughtful base budget. It'll total $88.9 billion, which is 1.8% above the 2012-2013 base. All funds will be a decrease of some 1.6%. Basically, the budget fully funds the enrollment growth not only in public education but also in higher education, funds new bond issuance for water and transportation, funds our Medicaid caseload growth at the August 2013 level, and has finance charges that reduce our use of GR dedicated funds. I think that's important because I know Senator Williams and Senator Hinojosa have been interested in order to create more transparency in our budget, more transparency to end diversions and to true up the budget. Why is all this important? It's important because Texas is literally creating opportunity for people by creating more jobs, and we want to keep that going so that the people of Texas have jobs, the people of Texas have opportunity, and we can continue to provide an excellent opportunity for everyone, all of our children, to have access to a great education, both public education and higher education. It's important that at the same time we fund our priorities, and our priorities, at least to me, have always been our public education, our higher education, our public safety, building our roads and taking care for people who have no one else to help them. Let me turn this over to our chairman of our Senate Finance and then to our vice chairman, Senator Williams.
Thank you, Governor. Well, thank you all for being here. Senate Bill 1 is a starting point for the Senate Finance Committee to begin working on the budget. I'd like to point out that it doesn't rely on GRD balances or dedicated accounts, and it's well within our spending limits. Sarah, would you put my, there you go. There's really three things that that I think are important that I'd like to point out to you. One is it is a starting point. Secondly, in public and higher education, enrollment growth is fully funded based on 85,000 new students per year in our public education system. The instructional materials allotment is funded, and it assumes that the foundation school program, the deferral that we made in the last session, is reversed by a supplemental appropriations bill. Our general academic institutions and our health-related institutions, as Governor Dewhurst has already mentioned, are funded for enrollment growth, and the formula funding has been increased. Special items for institutions of higher education are funded at the current levels, and the competitive knowledge fund is maintained at the same level. I think that it's important that the Senate Finance Committee and my colleagues in the Senate and the House have an opportunity to have their voices heard in the budget, and that's what we've endeavored to do, is start as close as we can to where we ended in the last session so that this legislature can make the spending decisions. With respect to Health and Human Services, I want to echo what Governor Dewhurst said. Protecting the most vulnerable citizens that we have in Texas has always been a priority for me in the Health and Human Services area. The elderly, people with mental illness and who are developmentally disabled and don't have the family or resources to take care of them, we should focus on this area in Health and Human Services. And a large number of those folks are served by our waiver programs. Senate Bill 1 funds these programs at the August 2013 projected caseload levels. Medicaid caseload growth is maintained at the August 2013 levels, and the bill includes an additional $176 million for Medicaid funding due to a less favorable federal match that we'll be getting. Rider 61 presumes that we'll have $250 million of Medicaid savings. I'm looking forward to working with Senator Nelson and the other members of the Finance Committee to continue to try to wring out efficiencies and cut waste, fraud, and abuse in this area. And I'm looking forward to working with the Lieutenant Governor, the members of the Senate Finance Committee, and my colleagues in both the Senate and the House to craft a budget that focuses on controlling spending, funding our priorities, and moving our state forward into the 21st century. Many of you have heard me say before that if the 20th century was the American century, then the 21st century should be the Texas century. And I think that we're poised to lead our country into the 21st century with a brighter and more prosperous future because of the hard work of the citizens in our state and the restraint that's been shown here in the legislature in growing state government only as much as is necessary to fund essential services. If we're going to continue to enjoy the economic success that we've had in recent years, it's going to require that we invest in infrastructure, that we have a well-trained workforce, and that the restraint on state government spending that we've seen over the last decade continue into the future. So with that, I'd like to turn the mic over to Vice Chairman Senator Juan Hinojosa.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor, and thank you, Chairman Williams. People talk about us having a surplus, but I don't think we do have a surplus for a simple reason that we still have a lot of bills that were unpaid from last session. We underfunded Medicaid. We borrowed some money through by delaying certain payments for the school foundation program. But $89 billion is a very good start. We're better off than last session. And for us to think that we can go back to the same spending levels that we did prior to recession, I think I'm realistic. Texas leads the nation in the creation of new jobs, but we still have a lot of investments to make in our water plan, in our transportation needs. And for us, as we work through the process, we look forward again to at least funding the essentials that the state needs to continue making progress in education, in health care, transportation, in our water needs. And I look forward to working with Lieutenant Governor Dewhurst, new Chairman Tommy Williams, and the other members of the Finance Committee to make sure we come up with a viable budget that at least takes care of our essentials. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Questions?
First time since you've been Lieutenant Governor that you're very present to come out of the House.
Once again, it just shows you what a conservative group, Bob, we have here in the Texas Senate.
What do you think are the main differences between you and the House?
Well, I think the similarities in our budget are strong. I think the major difference, quite frankly, Bob, is that the House projected their caseload growth based upon August of 2015, and Senator Williams and Senator Hinojosa wanted to develop those caseload studies, and obviously as information comes in, we'll adjust our budget. But Senator Williams and Senator Hinojosa want to have the participation of the other 13 members of Senate Finance. And so that's the major difference. It's about a $400 million difference.
The House budget does not include any grants for cancer prevention and research institutes.
That's my understanding that it does not. No, it does not. In other words, I would expect that during the session we'll be able to address the governance of the Cancer Prevention and Research Institute and move legislation that will memorialize those understandings on governance so that the full confidence and the trust of the people of Texas is behind this noble pursuit to find promising drugs, get them into the market, and save lives. But at the present time, we did not include the bond coverage in our base opening budget.
Just to make sure, when you talk about funding enrollment growth, does that include the enrollment growth that wasn't covered in the last budget and the enrollment growth that has happened since the last budget?
It covers the enrollment growth that's occurred since the last budget.
Correct.
State money is put in for public ed and also for higher ed.
1 point. Yeah.
You want me to?
Sure.
Yeah, when you look at public education, I think you have to look at that we've also had a big increase in our property value, and that affects it overall. I think we've got $1.2 billion in there for enrollment growth. Does that sound right?
I think it's
So, that's for public education, right?
What about for higher education?
We included our population growth on our higher education, and we can get you that number, Peggy.
Yeah, we included the enrollment growth, and the other significant thing in higher education is at the end of the last session, there was about $62 or $65 million that was put in for a hold harmless provision to try to go back and make up for some of the cuts on our general academic institutions and the health-related institutions. That money was rolled into formula funding, and that's where I want my focus to be, and where I hope the committee will focus is formula funding is really what makes our institutions be able to carry out their mission.
And the $1.2 billion is for
I think that's right. Yeah.
Yes. Let me go back, because one of the statements that was made, and I keep hearing it, is underfunding in the 2012-2013 session Medicaid by 6 months. Again, we did that on purpose. We had the money sitting in the rainy day fund, but we had a series of reforms in Senate Bill 7 that we wanted to use best efforts to get implemented. And we felt very strongly that the bureaucracy would not embrace these reforms if we funded all of the provisions, and it's turned out there's a happy ending. We've gotten a savings from reforms of about $2 billion, and we've improved our health care outcomes, so I'm very appreciative to the staff at Health and Human Services, and that's the reason why we did that. But we're funding some $4.5 billion to go ahead and cover Medicaid costs through the end of this fiscal year, August 31st, 2013. And the supplement will be also added to by the cost of the wildfires, our prison correctional health care, and truing up the funding on our public schools, which will reverse the deferral by 1 day and cost about $1.75 billion.
Thank you. Excuse the enrollment growth. Excuse me, I want to correct what I said. It's $2.2 billion for enrollment growth that's in the budget, not 1.2. I misspoke. So, yeah.
Governor, does this address your proposed $1 billion drawdown in the rainy day fund?
No, it does not. Again, this is an initial base budget that we'll be having hearings on all of our articles, including natural resources, and talking about water development, as we will be to focus on health and human services, pregnant women, children, elderly, frail, disabled, etc. So.
The waiver programs under Medicaid, there would be no pay raise for any of the care takers under this base budget.
On the base budget, no.
Not in the base budget, no.
So if you are not relying on
Last question.
any GR dedicated, you are phasing out all of GR dedicated in one bill?
$5 billion.
The introduced version of the bill does not rely on GR dedicated. So we've got a process that we've got to go through, and so I think that's going to be one of the decisions that the committee has to make. I think my suspicion is that it's going to take 2 or 3 sessions to bring that in for a landing where we don't rely on that. But a good start is to begin with a budget that doesn't rely on the GR dedicated balances.
Let me just go one step further, because I expect that a number of you might have questions when you take a look at our recommendations by method of finance between all funds, general revenue, GRD, et cetera. And I'm willing to bet some of you will have some questions. So let me just quickly say, all right, yeah. On all funds, which is your first sheet, Bob, that when you see a decrease of a little over $1 billion on general revenue, that's the secret bonds. When you look at higher ed, a reduction of $6.2 billion, that is a change in our method of finance in which several years ago the legislature included in the appropriation nominally the patient payments. So in order to have this represent general revenue and GRD and our federal funds, we've eliminated the pass-through of patient payments to our health science centers and MD Anderson. That's what that reduction of $6.2 billion represents. On public safety and criminal justice, that $500 million is a loss in some of the federal funds, and the increase in business and economic development is the increase in the bonds and the coverage that we've provided for the Texas Department of Transportation. On general revenue funds, the only item which has a negative amount is higher education, $236,000, or rather $236 million, and that's exclusively due to the increased cost in correctional prison health care by UTMB in Galveston and our wildfires. Yes, I'm hopeful that we will reach an agreement not only in the Senate but with the House on governance changes to CPRIT that will again capture the trust and the confidence of the people of Texas, where we have maximum transparency and we can move forward in this effort. We've got a good start. We've got some some very thoughtful investments in basic research, in transitional research. But I felt very strongly that we should stop the process and make sure that we made any necessary changes in governance that the 4 or 5 different organizations that are looking at CPRIT would recommend, and then we'll move forward with full dispatch.
Can you just say how much the new bonds for water and transportation?
On the all funds level, the $2.4 billion represents mainly the TxDOT bonds. All right. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Ken.